Life is full of transitions, and one of the most memorable is when we get ready to leave high school and go out into the world as young adults. When the student has a disability, it is especially helpful to plan ahead for that transition. In fact, IDEA requires it. Transition services are intended to prepare students to move from the world of school to the world of adulthood. Transition planning begins during high school. IDEA requires that transition planning start by the time the student is 16. Transition planning may start earlier if the IEP team decides it would be appropriate to do so. Transition planning takes place as part of developing the student's individualized education program. The IEP team, which includes the student and parents, develops a transition plan. The student must be invited to any IEP meetings where post-secondary goals and transition services needed to be reached. Those goals would be considered. In transition planning, the IEP team considers areas such as post-secondary education or vocational training, employment, independent living, and community participation. Transition services may be a coordinated set of activities oriented towards producing results. Transition services are based on the student's needs and must take into account his or her preferences and interests. When IDEA was defining transition services, it mentions the domains of independent and adult living, the community, employment, adult services, daily living skills, vocational, post-secondary education. This clearly acknowledges that the adulthood involves a wide range of skill areas and activities. It also makes it clear that preparing a child with a disability to perform functionally across this spectrum of areas and activities may involve considerable planning, attention, and focus, as well as coordinated services. When IDEA defined transitional services, there was great emphasis put on coordinated. It is italicized because it is a very important word. Transition activities should not be just haphazard, scatterbrained activities. Services are to be planned as in sync with one another in order to drive towards a positive result. What positive results are they looking for? From a federal perspective, the results being sought can be found in the very first findings of Congress in IDEA, which refers to our national policy of ensuring equality of opportunity, full participation, independent living, and economic self-sufficiency for individuals with disabilities, preparing children with disabilities to lead productive and independent adult lives to the maximum extent possible is one of IDEA's stated objectives. It is important to understand that the students are at the heart of the planning for the transitional services. For the students themselves, transitional activities are personally defined. This means that the post-secondary goals that are developed for a student must take into account his or her interests, preferences, needs, and strengths.